Hi everyone, and welcome to Inspiring Technology Stories of Success. I think it's just time we should get started anyway, and if people join in as we go along, that'd be great. So today on our next episode, I suppose, of our stories of success and leaders within technology, Ireland. I really wanted to get this person on a call for quite some time. I know Anthi Gilligan now, I suppose, about 8 years. I've worked with her as both candidate and a client, and we've stayed in contact over the past 8 years. So I just thought our story is really, really interesting. We're going to discuss her early days within IT, how she's moved into security, and what she's doing then, obviously, in her current role as CISO and founder of Akeero. So that's how we're going to go from there. So yeah, so Anthi, how are you getting on? How are you today?
Great, delighted to be here. Absolutely, was really looking forward to this. Obviously, great to see you again. Like you said, we've known each other a very long time. So yeah, it was absolutely a no-brainer to say yes to the invitation for here.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, we've had a couple of stop starts. I think it was with the holiday season and a number of things happening, and a lot of positive things happening as well on your side as well, which is fantastic. So yeah, let's kick it off. Like, so as I said, when I'm talking to people, it's really important within IT, because particularly today, a lot of people come into IT in so many different ways, whether it be, through education, whether it be their first job in technical support, they get certifications and work their way up. So I know from talking to you over the years, you do have, some interesting stories. So within IT, that would be the first question. How did IT come about? How did you get into IT?
So I guess it was a bit of a fluke. I didn't grow up having an interest in computers like other people. Like, I'd play games on the PC, my 286 at the time, Amiga and all that kind of stuff, but I never kind of had any notions of doing this as a career. And I was working at the cafe bar in my native Greece over the summer, last year of school, and just out of nowhere, the owner kind of decided to separate one of the areas in the bar, and he installed these 4 PCs there. So I had to become like an internet cafe type expert. And I still remember when he was showing me how the internet worked, and I was like, he was saying, and you can search for anything here. I was like, what do you mean? He was like, you can search for anything. What do you want to search for? I was like, but what do you mean anything? Like, the concept really hadn't sunk in yet. It was some sort of portal. It was a time before Lycos or any of those. It was just this big portal, and I had crazy images on it and just this big search bar. And the interest kind of started there. With IT, I decided to go to university in the UK. So I studied in Scotland. I did a bachelor's in computer science, and no notions of security back then either. But my final year, I had one module. It was called network security, and I thought, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. Let's find out a little bit more about that. And then I decided to stay on and do a master's degree. So I went into Wales and I did a master's in computer system security, and the love kind of went from there.
And like, where are you sitting in Greece with the sunshine beaming, and then you decide, I'm going to go to Scotland? So where does that all come about? Did you see the course? Yeah, did you see it somewhere? Like, how did that
you have
come
to
about?
think, like, the IT sciences and computer science in general wasn't particularly advanced in the Greek universities back then. And there wasn't as many options. The entry exams were also incredibly difficult. Like, you'd expect to, have the same result as if you wanted to go to med school, if you wanted to do like an IT course. So it was a bit nuts. And as much as I liked studying, I knew that I was never going to commit so much to get accepted into the Greek university. But again, at the same time, the options were fewer.
Brilliant. I think they were putting the onus a lot on the science part rather than the computers. So when they said computer science, we're getting and scientists here.
For security, it was absolutely a no-brainer to continue and stay abroad, because again, computer security was, unheard of. Like in Greek universities at that stage. There was absolutely nothing, no offering for that type of a degree. So I just ended up moving to Wales instead, which was
this was probably even before the McAfee days, and even that, probably around then when that those protection tools and stuff were starting to come out. So it was probably in the infancy of security when you were actually starting to look at it, which is really, really interesting. And that brings us to the path, so obviously you've went from the times where, you're talking about security, maybe even the word cyber wasn't even around back then.
Absolutely not.
Definitely not. And then
you'd be flogged to death for using that term back then.
Yeah, that's all. I was a bit worried saying that there again for the InfoSec people and everyone that could be on. So so that moves along. You've obviously you got your master's. You were looking at being more specialist in what you were doing. So how did you land your first job or your first roles? Because how did that all come about?
That was tough. I mean, it's always tough. Getting your first job is like the most difficult process. Once you get that first one, it's much easier to move around. But Jesus, so I moved to Tramore. When I moved to Ireland, I went to Tramore. Okay.
So you started in Greece and went to Tramore. No offense.
I didn't know how small Tramore was, but that's where I ended up anyway. So I was looking for security jobs in Waterford, which is the nearest city, and there were none. There were absolutely no security jobs back then. IT jobs, many. Again, I had to take a move to Dublin to get one of those after probably 6 months of applying, because same as it is now, it's nothing new. You're looking for a graduate position, but everybody's looking for years of experience and being able to do a whole bunch of things. So my first job was the internal IT support help desk for Microsoft, which was very interesting. I actually learned so much. I had great people working beside me. I'm still in touch with a couple of them.
Yeah. I hope they gave you shares when you landed.
I wish. Yeah, so that was my first job. It was actually a really, really good first step for somebody coming out of university, because you don't have that practical experience. And back then, again, hands-on labs and that kind of thing, they were nowhere near the level they are now. So it was badly needed, that type of experience. So I stayed there for about 6 months until I got my first security break, and landed at Ulster Bank.
Brilliant.
That was.
And what side of security were you in at that stage? So we know there's obviously so many different elements to security, information side, the technical side.
Yeah.
Like at that stage, was it segmented into different areas, or like what was the interest? And was it the more techie pen testing, type of space, or was it the more info space? Like how did that all kind of develop or evolve?
So that job was systems access and privacy protection, that kind of thing. It was a bank, so obviously they were very conscious of that. It was trying to change the ways of doing things back then, which was systems access, and access to all the systems as an admin was done by the different business departments. So the financing people that worked in the payments part of the bank, they were the admins for all the payment systems, which obviously was not appropriate. Segregation of duties were just coming on board, basically. So I started off there. I stayed in that team for a long time, and then I moved to, actually security was part of the IT department there, again, long time ago. And moved then to systems admin. I was a sysadmin, so had a small server farm and support the trading floor. So I did that for a while. That was actually good for getting a much deeper understanding of, operating systems and that kind of thing, networking and all that. So that was pretty cool. And my final role at the bank there was actually doing business continuity planning. Because because again, it was something that needed to be taken out of, the business units and centralized within the security team. So BCP and DR, that was pretty interesting as well. So I saw a lot of things. Possibly I stayed a little bit too long at that one job. I'll just, put it all in one bucket, 8 years.
Okay. Brilliant. So then what made you move on then? So you then went into, was it Sysnet then that you went into after that?
Yeah.
That's
so it was actually somebody, one of the managers on the trading floor that kind of made me realize it was time for me to move on, because everybody
Thanks
was
for that. Are you still here? Time to go.
Everybody seemed to be kind of a little bit over reliant on me at times, and it was a very stressful environment to be fair. And I was always worried about, oh Jesus, I'm going to be gone for 1 week. Jesus, what's going to happen? And he was like, you know what, Anthi, nobody's irreplaceable. Go do what you need to do for yourself. I was like,
I think that's right. one of the best sayings out there. I think everybody quite realized that one moment or another. So
shout out to Paul McEnroe for this. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. So then that just put you on the path to the levels that you were looking at and how you could improve and develop your skills, because that's another observation that I've always noticed when speaking to Anthi, was when we were chatting, was like you were always the next certification was coming up, or you were delivering the SAN certifications, if I'm not mistaken. So there was always that piece. So everybody are talking about the upskilling of workers in today's environments. In particular, I worked a lot on cyber back in 2017, 2018 with GDPR and stuff coming into play. And we spoke a lot back then. So then the talent was tough and hard to find in all spaces, but in particular, the niche side of things was always information and cyber security. So like, what would you say, or how did you develop with your certifications and with the areas that you were focusing on? How did you identify that I'm going to go down this path, and then what actions and steps did you put in play? Because I know you worked in environments that were constantly busy, a lot of things happen, a lot of scaling, transition within those organizations. So how did you break down and identify those courses, and then how did you manage to achieve, I suppose, the certifications that you have?
Yeah, so I never want to be in the same situation that I was when I left my first job, which was 8 years with basically nothing to show for. I had on paper, there was nothing new that I learned, having spent 8 years at that organization. So I never want to be in the same situation again. So I took upskilling, training, education really seriously. And I guess I picked the courses based on what interested me. And sometimes you're really good at what interests you, but other times you're really good at something that, maybe wouldn't be your best choice. And like, security is such a broad piece of work. Like, there's so many different areas in it. And I didn't know what was there. I didn't know what I liked. I didn't know what I was good at. So I tried to do a course on each area that I thought that might be cool. So, security monitoring would be something, and DevOps would be something else. So I just wanted to see what is out there. And it's also going to help me understand to see how all things tie together in a company where you have all those disparate teams, but sometimes they don't talk to each other. So it's good to understand. It's good to understand the pen testing side of things, which would have been my academic background, but also understand the SecOps guys and understand the DevSecOps guys and understand the cloud engineers, and I understand how it all ties together as well. The SANS courses were, I don't know, this is an advertising, I'm not getting paid for saying this, but SANS courses was absolutely
maybe you will if you take the course down the road. Who knows?
They're obviously very expensive, but at the same time I was very lucky to work for companies that appreciated training and development. So when I moved into Bank of Ireland, I was really lucky to have a manager that understood the need for learning the new technologies that you're supposed to work with. So we had some SANS courses provided by them, and they were fantastic. Been doing those ever since, pretty much. AWS certifications as well. Because that's cloud.
That was just touching on there what you were talking about. So say I'm you or system administrator, because we know like a lot of people that are system administrators, that was traditionally the method that they'd go, system admin, and then in the infrastructure, and then they become more specialized in the network security space. So if you were, someone today looking at potential courses or things to do, we know obviously CISP and ISACA certifications are there, but you have to get some time under your belt before you start enrolling in those. So like, where would you say are the areas within security today that people should be looking at? As you said, is it AWS security within the cloud? Like, where do you see people then future proof in their career, or as I said, becoming a more skilled worker?
Yeah, cloud and automation 100%. AWS, obviously biggest market share, but for how long? Everybody's starting spinning up their own clouds. Like Ali Cloud is out there now. That wasn't there 5 or 6 years ago. But GCP and Azure, they're also starting to keep on a huge chunk of the
I'm hearing a lot about GCP. I'm hearing a lot that GCP are starting. There's some clients that I work with are becoming partners with GCP.
Yeah.
So
I think it's really important to understand the cloud, because even if, say, you're not working in a kind of the technical aspect of security, but even if it's audit or if it's GRC, you still need to understand your company's infrastructure. And right now, more likely than not, that's on the cloud. So you need to understand what's going on there.
Yeah, because that's another concept that people might know, or business people are like, oh, sure, it's in the cloud, AWS, GCP, Google, they're all going to look after it for me. But
yeah, and they do to a certain extent. Like they have this notion of the shared responsibility model, and they're responsible for their infrastructure when they're providing a managed service. But like the likes of AWS made it so easy to spin up services and applications, but it's also made it so difficult to actually screw something up and release it to the cloud without any security.
Yeah. And I've heard a good saying, I don't know if it was yourself that said it to me before, but it's like, there's certain parts of let's say even your own home and where you keep the let's say the crown jewels or whatever, there's certain ways of security, but you don't want to not know how everything is worked with the data that is most sensitive to your business. So it's really important that you have somebody on the inside that understands this is our responsibility, that's their responsibility, and this is how we protect, as I said, as much as you can. So now that's really good advice from an educational point of view. And I think in our space, like even if it's software development or any other space, or even project management with the print certifications and everything like that, it's a never changing digital world. There's always changes happening. So I think it's important for people in IT to keep an eye out of what the next trends.
Absolutely, but even with software development, like a software developer working on a company where the products are built on the cloud, whether that's AWS or something else, that software developer has a huge amount of responsibility in actually creating cloud resources. They're actually doing that as part of their work. So hugely important that they also understand what's going on.
100%. So, moving into where you're at now and within your career. So like, as you said, when you were talking and you were saying you were in Ulster Bank for 8 years and you were, happy out doing what you were doing there, but you weren't potentially challenging yourself outside from the outside world and getting the education and certifications. And I hope you don't mind me saying, when you're looking at your CV, it's really high-end secure company. So going from Microsoft to the Ulster Banks, the Sysnets, the force points and places that you've worked in, then and after. So that leads me on then, like, where did it come then that you were, you were obviously doing really great in the roles, you've progressed really well in all those different organizations. So where did your current company come about, or how did this all happen then, going from, as I said, traditional, let's say steady role, good pensions or whatever people might say, to like scratching that itch? So where did this all come from, and how is it evolving?
Yeah, I guess it started with a better understanding and appreciation of the cloud as well, because I was working at Logitech and ForcePoint, and they're both heavy users of the cloud. So that environment was actually pretty interesting. And working in those companies for a while, you start to understand the challenges of doing security in the cloud with regards to tooling. And particularly threat modeling, secure design, because doing security architecture for large organizations using the cloud, it was very difficult. Software development happened really, really quickly. And if you're trying to have a look at the design of a software solution from the security perspective, by the time you actually get an accurate networking diagram, the sprint has already finished and the feature has been moved to production, and you're still there looking at the network diagram. So you realize the tooling that is out there to enable automation for the very, very start of the software development lifecycle, or secure software development lifecycle, wasn't there. So my co-founder, Kieran O'Keefe, was particularly bothered by the fact that tooling wasn't available to do that in an automated way. And we're having lunch one day, and he was like, why don't we go build one? And I thought, well, that's a great idea. Let's go do that. So we started up Akeero, and now we're helping development and product and security teams actually prevent secure misconfigurations for their cloud products and infrastructures. And it's been interesting to say the least. My whole understanding of the startup and VC world was just by watching a TV show called Silicon Valley.
Yep.
It is very accurate, as it turns out.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a bit based on the Steve Jobs era, isn't it? And everything like that being set up. I think they're taking obviously the bits and pieces of the startups in Silicon
certain
Valley,
artistic licenses, but it's
it's
pretty accurate.
Quite close. Brilliant. I think I only watched the trailer, and I need to go and watch it definitely, and see where what it's all about, because obviously it gives us more insight. But it's good to obviously see your journey and how you're growing and how things are moving forward. I know from speaking to you offline and how things are going, which is really positive. So like day to day then as well, like giving people advice and managing your day, like what would be your best advice for people, not so much even in a startup, just in a leadership role, or having to wear many hats, like how would you prepare, or how would you prep for the week ahead? If anything, like a lot of people just throw it and make things happen, but how would you like put things into place, and what would you say? Because I've obviously observed top performer, you've obviously progressed quite well in the last few years in particular. So like, what would your advice for kind of people in IT looking to be future leaders and looking to set out their stall to get those promotions and get to the next level?
So never stop learning is one thing. Like we talked about certifications, training and all that. It is so important, because what happens is like this loyalty of working for the same company for 20, 30, 40 years, that no longer happens. But you need to make yourself desirable for the next move. Like the job that you want, you need to make it so somebody looks at your CV and you're going to be guaranteed at least an interview. Once you're there, obviously everything is up to you. But I think that's the difference between a developer CV and a security person CV. Like with a developer, you can add your GitHub profile on your CV, and they can look at your projects and make some sort of informed decision. But as a security person, you have nothing to demonstrate.
You can't show how you secured that bank.
Yeah,
I get
absolutely.
it.
And the thing is, master's degrees, although I hold one, if I were to do it again now, I wouldn't. Because right now I think there's a lot more value in the professional qualifications, so AWS certifications, that kind of thing, because they actually demonstrate maybe not 100% working experience, but you have some sort of level of expertise in the area other than the theory.
So if you're the perfect candidate or the perfect person that's looking, is do your bachelor's computer science, just obviously in our opinion, then go in and have a look at AWS and all the different certifications there, and hopefully then get an entry level role with a really good company that you can get in and learn and develop with.
Yeah, internships as well. I know it's a little bit difficult to get them, but if somebody is out there trying to start out now, internships is one way. ideally paid,
Yeah.
ideally paid.
Yeah, no.
But at the push, like if you're living at home and there's with the parents and there's no expenses, there's no harm considering an unpaid position as well. I personally would never take an unpaid intern at my company. I believe everybody deserves to get paid for the job that they do, but that's neither here nor there. And
it's about building for your future is what you're saying. If it means 3-6 months getting in there, it's either pay now or pay later, so you'll get paid later.
And networking, getting to know the community. Like there's a lot of security communities out there. There's the OWASP chapters, there's the ISACA, IAC, loads of conferences happening in Dublin and other areas that are specific to cybersecurity. I'll make a plug here for B-Sides Dublin because I'm one of the organizers.
Brilliant.
Very, very welcoming conferences, especially for rookies and not. 0 days, they have like their annual capture the flag competition. Again, they're targeted to somebody who's new in security, whether the students or not. Absolutely great places to go there and meet people. And to be honest, like networking is half the job. You'll know somebody and they know you, they like you, they know they have some sort of skills. If they have a job opening, they will consider.
Yeah, no, that's what I find with security. It's such a small world. People know each other, and which is good because everyone is learning from each other as well. So what leads me on there as well, Anthi. I know we can't talk about particular probably projects that you worked within, but I know you were involved in one of the biggest projects or IT digital transformations in Europe. We don't have to say exactly where, but we both know the project and what went on there. So like, what would your advice be? Because you went from a smaller team, you scaled the business, there was so many moving wheels happening in there and spinning plates, and because there was a lot of hiring into the dev teams, there was lots of hiring into leadership functions as well across the business. So like, what would your advice to be to a company that is going on to big projects, looking to deliver upon those projects, and how they would scale in their team? So this comes back into probably my more recruitment side of things. What would you recommend? So if you're sitting there, the project that you worked on particularly before, what would your plan be in scaling that business? Because as I said, a lot of people are talking about the talent shortage and the talent war, or whatever way you want to say it. So what would your advice be now looking back on that project and what you delivered upon that? As I said, it was the biggest project happening in Europe, which we know.
It was massive. So obviously we were looking at it from a security architecture perspective, and like you're saying, we just never had enough people on the team. We were very lucky that we had a fantastic team of security architects. So one thing would be, don't compromise, like hire the A+ people, because you will pay for it if you don't. You're gonna have to replace them 3 months or 6 months down the line, or you're gonna have to redo the work that they've been doing because the quality isn't particularly good.
So if you're looking, let's say, even in your own shoes now, so if you're looking, let's say, from a recruitment perspective or building out that and scaling that business, so do you look at the cost to the business and the cost of the deliverance of that project, and then looking at the value that this person can add? So as I said, if it's package, money, whatever. So do you believe, as I said, more quality over quantity, and then
absolutely
the full cost to the business? Then is that all factored in? Because that's what I feel like a lot of people are saying about the talent war. There's some really quality people out there, but some companies, a lot of companies may not want to pay for that quality or talent. So is that kind of what you look at, is the project deliverables, the cost that project could actually, and the value it could bring to the business, and then the person that needs to be on the level to deliver that? Is that kind of what you look at? Or
if the timelines allow, absolutely wait to get the right people in the team. I know that's not always possible, especially with projects that have to deal with compliance and that kind of thing. It's not always possible. And if that's the case, hire somebody who is good enough and they can deliver something, they can add value to the projects. But I would absolutely wait for the right person.
And would you recommend hiring like a contractor and then have that right permanent person come in? So like everyone knows contractors, they're judged probably on the last project and what they delivered. So would you say, like, if the budget is there, get a contractor in to do some heavy lifting if it needs to happen, and then, you know, find the right permanent person? You know, this isn't, I'm not looking at sales tactic or technique. I'm just trying to understand
no, that
the
makes sense.
the mindset of an IT department that is, you know, 80-20 contract to perm, or like, what does that look like?
Well, we all know contractors are really expensive, right? As opposed to a permanent employee. So I think what you have to weigh in is the duration of the project. And I know that particular project, we obviously never realized that it would go on for so long. Like, it ran on for years longer than we anticipated. So we had decided to go with contractors then, and to be fair to them, they were absolutely fantastic, like total workhorses, and the quality of work was second to none. In fact, a few of them were offered permanent positions to stay on afterwards. At the same time, if you're struggling to get the numbers in, again, automation, and something we didn't do back then, we didn't use automation where we could have. Maybe because it was difficult to explain, and difficult to explain the budget. You know, you're taking a chunk out of the budget that was possibly, you know, put aside for, you know, headcount of 1 or headcount of 2, and you're using it.
But it was very early days as well, because, you know, the time, and we won't go back and say the actual time because they know who it was. But in terms of, it wasn't just recently, you know, we're hearing a lot about, you know, automation first, CICD environments, etc. So like the automation piece was probably, a lot of things were moving away from manual at that time in my experience, and it was really talking about Selenium from, like, let's say, pure automation and automating environments through let's say traditional development. So obviously there's different tools and different ways of doing it within security. So so today would be looking at automation first, where you can automate and can help you.
Absolutely look at automation. It's like trying to get the brunt of the work out of somebody's day, and then they can focus and actually produce quality work for the bit that requires that, you know, logical thinking that the human can offer. Like, I remember that the team for that security architecture project, those contractors were absolutely top notch, and yet they spend half their days dealing with spreadsheets and updating spreadsheets, and they're much better days on doing that, but it was difficult to justify at the time. I think would have been potentially a no-brainer now, but different times, like you said.
Yeah, it's easy looking back in hindsight, but that's what, like, it's good to know in terms of the scale and where you see the value as well, is delivering the project, delivering it with, you know, the quality that needs to happen. And then, as you said, you're either going to pay now or you're going to pay later, depending. So it's just taking all of those factors into play. So, you know, that leads me into what we'll do is I ask everybody that I'm speaking to around more of a softer question in way of your favorite film or your favorite book. You know, maybe personally, or maybe books that you would recommend people to read within IT, whatever kind of works on your side, Anthi.
So a favorite movie is Spinal Tap. Don't know, have you watched it?
Never heard of it. No.
Watch it. It's comedy. I won't tell you what it's about, but just look it up.
You'll give it away.
See the rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and that will get you to decide to watch it. So that's all I'm going to say, because I don't want to spoil it. It's a movie that I've watched I don't know how many times, and every time I watch it, it's even funnier than the last time, and I'll pick up on a joke that I missed the previous time. It just it's the movie that keeps on giving. I'm telling you, you have to watch it. Book, I like The Stand by Stephen King. It's a very large book. I actually reread it since the pandemic because I thought it was very appropriate. It's a world where this, virus has been released to the world from a military compound, and
yeah. someone wrote the script. The conspiracy theories out there. Yeah. Brilliant.
Pretty good.
And is there any book that you'd look at from an IT perspective? Obviously, you spoke about Silicon Valley, the program for people that are wanting to get into IT or grow their own company and understand the startup environment. If you're in traditional and you're going to get into startup, have a watch of that before you sign the contract. So yeah, so moving on then, is there any book that you recommend for anyone in IT? Or?
Yeah, I don't know for a book that's specifically for anyone in IT, but I was recommended a book by the good people at Sequoia Capital, and it's called Grit. And it's just it kind of dives into what makes you successful. What can and that could be for anything, IT or business or whatever it is. It was a pretty interesting book. A lot of the things, once you start reading it, you realize is stuff you would have figured out on your own, but somebody has actually done the research and you know, it's like
stuff you just don't implement. You're like, I know I can do that, or today's Monday, I'll get that done by Friday.
Yeah, so, it's an interesting book. It talks about, you know, the difference between talent and perseverance, and that the most successful people actually turn out to be not the ones that had the talent, but the ones that actually persevered in achieving what it was they wanted to achieve and what they wanted to be good at.
Yeah,
that's how I'd sum it up.
Yeah, no, so for some observations, I'd agree. But you know, my 10 years in IT, I definitely agree with a lot of stuff that you're saying there. So Grit is on the book list for me, so I'll take that one, which is brilliant. So then the next one, which I'd like to ask, and then we have a couple of questions there, is advancing within security today. So if I'm a security person, how will I advance? Like, so as we said, if you're in InfoSec, like, do you go and get more, you know, cyber aware, more technically aware? Like, where do you see the value that could be added to you if you are in, you know, security space? I know you've touched on a lot of those points already, but like, what would you say in advancing within the security domain? How do you get from system administrator like yourself to you know, director, CISO level? What would your advice be to that person?
If you want to do it, I mean, you know, it's absolutely not for everyone. I would 100% recommend it, but I understand it's not for everyone. But if you want to advance, like, I don't really want to say it, but I think at this stage it might be necessary that you move companies every couple of years.
Sounds good to me, being a recruiter. I didn't pay it, don't worry.
I think it depends on the management that you have in your current role. Like, if they understand the value of making you a better worker and adding more value to the organization, you know, ideally there wouldn't be this shift, but it's really difficult to find.
Because that links back in what we spoke about before we jumped on the call. You were saying about, you know, mentors and leaders that you learn from. So are you a believer in, you know, doing it, you learn yourself, or are you a believer in to reach out to people, or, you know, have mentors that can uplift you, or questions you can ask of situations that you're in, or learns that you can have? So, you know, do you have mentors, official, unofficial, people that you aspire to be?
Spot on. I was just about to say, I had a mentor. It was unofficial. His name is Dr. Greg Frangos, and he was a mentor to me, unofficial. It's just we were working together. We had actually met when I was doing my master's. He was doing his PhD in security, and we met again when I was working at Sysnet. And it was through him that I kind of got this big desire to keep learning and making sure that I always have value to add to where it is that I want to go. So mentorship, 100%. Like you said, you preempted it. It doesn't have to be official, but there are loads of areas where you can actually get an official mentor. There's Cyber Ireland and Cyber Women Ireland. You know, you could get a mentor through them, and you know, they will give you advice on, you know, what's the latest courses, or where's the trends going, where do we see the skills gap, so you can train yourself to fill those gaps and get a better job, or the job that you want. I can't stress learning enough. Like, I can't. I think it's the number one thing. Mentorship, you know, you get some advice through there. Networking is another, and again, learning through those networking spaces, conferences, meetups, they're all really valuable, and you learn so much through them. Utilizing social media a little bit better for the purpose of security, like my Twitter account, I only use for work. and there's like fantastic fees that you can get into and get really, really good information, the latest news, newest exploits, anything that is out there.
The latest patches. Yeah, no, I definitely I get it. But no, that's brilliant advice. I'd be one to say, definitely mentors more like unofficial, official, to raise you up and even raise your game, even to check in, because you could think you're doing a good job and then someone just checks in and say, listen, the human yourself, like you can become a little bit incomplacent, or maybe laziness and stuff like that can set in. So I do think there's some really good books from a leadership perspective, and one that was given to me when I landed here. It was the 1 Minute Manager. I thought it was really good from a leadership and people management perspective. So that would probably be one that I'd recommend. So I think we've had a good chat, and we've got a lot of information there. So we have one or two just questions just to touch on.
Great.
So what can you see being the most up and coming areas in security? So you spoke about cloud security, you spoke about points there. And what would you see? Because there's a lot of different segments now. It used to be, as you said, just information security, cyber security, and now it's like AppSec and cloud ops and cloud SecOps and all of these different things. So for somebody in security and let's say companies looking to grow out their departments, because and use different companies and different tools, like what do you see as the most up and coming trends and areas like of protection of your company from information cyber? Like what would your advice be then to those people trying to understand security, I suppose?
So threat intelligence and threat analysis, that's been up and coming, and I guess it's your first line of defense, or what dictates the rest of your security strategy, understanding what are the threats to your organization. I think there's been a lot of shift towards that, and there's a lot of companies that have started forming formal threat intelligence units. Like banking would have had that for a long time, and they've always had their threat intelligence teams and their threat intelligence forums. So they've all been there, but obviously all the other companies, all the other industries now have started adopting the same. I had a conversation last week with somebody about an area of cybersecurity that I didn't know existed, and that was blockchain pen testing. So
nice. We know pen testers are niche, but then we're putting blockchain pen testers. So if you want to create value and you want to be niche, and I definitely advise.
I don't think you can get more niche than that.
No.
It's so niche that they're actually, the person I was speaking with, they are just trying to hire pen testers and training them to do that on the side.
Because that's interesting. Obviously I'm not an expert within blockchain, but like from my understanding, like when things are in the blockchain, they're in the blockchain, they're here to stay. There's no changing it. There's no modifying the code or anything like that. So is it, I don't know if you got more insight on that conversation, but is it like to pre-pen test the code and everything before it goes live on the blockchain?
I've
on the blockchain?
No clue.
No idea.
I have no clue.
Cool.
I have no clue.
So that's something for us to look into. Traditionally now, looking at companies, if I'm talking, as I said, 5 or 6 years ago when I was properly embedded in this space, traditionally I'll look at companies. It was always, as you said, the large financial organizations that would have their own teams working in their architects, and then there would be the big four, the other companies as well, consultancies that are in that world as well, that would go in and support businesses. So I don't know, with your friends or talking to people, are you seeing more trends of people having security people in-house? Are they still outsourcing it? And I obviously appreciate companies like yourselves and Teams and other companies like that are building these tools that can be part of the development life cycle and automate security and everything like that to make their staff and their engineers more security aware. So like, I know this is a big question, but what would your recommendation, if I'm a company of 100, 200 people, what would your recommendation be from a security posture and protection point of view? So like, would it be having people in-house, having teams? Would it be, using the consultancies as well for certain parts? Like what would you recommend, or what would your thoughts be on that?
So I think if it's project based, I would always go for outsourcing, because it's something that's finite. Like obviously you can't hire a permanent employee knowing full well that, in 6 months time they'll have no job. So outsourcing, contracting for something like that. Otherwise, having the in-house expertise is always better. I've seen, again, another trend, not specific to security, but also to software development. I've seen a lot of companies hiring large number of junior engineers, security or otherwise, and interns, and actually growing that talent. And the challenge there is finding the right person. Is it somebody who's actually hungry for learning? And do they have that itch that, they want to try and understand this thing, and then the other thing, and then another thing, and keep learning and growing with the company? So I've seen a lot of organizations doing that. They have a large number of interns and junior people in the teams, and they actually do nurture them, and they stay on with the company for far longer. The trouble is keeping them happy. Like everyone, I've also moved companies because something wasn't right with the previous company, and that could be money, that could be culture, that could be
projects,
training. Yeah, it could be workload, it could be any number of things. And trying to understand what that is for the majority of people and trying to retain them, I think is the best decision anyone could ever make, because like we were saying earlier, you don't pay for it now, you'll pay for it later. Like the cost of replacing a team member is huge, not just monetary wise for, the hiring charges, doing that effort, but also the time you spend retraining and upskilling that person. Then it's
massive. It's massive. The recruitment agencies and placing them and everything, it is a massive thing. Like, so, but where do you see then as well? Because we hear in the news, we've heard it forever, is there's a shortage in staff in software engineering, security, everything like that. Like that's what we're hearing, like, day in, day out. So like, where, like, do you see that organizations, as you're talking about junior people working their way up, but as you said, do you see that like there should be in every organization like a CISO or a leader within security that can advise, the board, depending on the company, can advise the key stakeholders in the business, and have an ownership of their security posture? As you said, we can outsource and give it to somebody else to handle, but like what your kind of thought process in relation to the kind of the senior end, and having somebody within your organization that can explain this is the right route to go down, or this could be a rabbit hole costing us X amount. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't think that anyone can understand the needs of the organization better than somebody who works for the company. For an organization that has more than say 100, 150 people, absolutely somebody in-house would be my go-to anyway. Understand the risk, have the relationship with the stakeholder as well, because you're presented to the board, you have to deal with other C-level executives, the relationships need to be there, understand the challenges from the other C-level people as well. It is a little bit of a leadership, and it's a bit of a political position when it gets to that. Is the thing. So you need to understand the company politics, and I'm not sure that somebody from outside the organization can do that as well in the long term.
No, I agree with that. And from observations and the best companies that I've seen that haven't had things happen, and touch wood for them as well. But then just on then a final note, and the final kind of question that I'd have then, just in relation to security and the kind of the day-to-day of that. So like, with like, I keep touching back on the talent war and everything like that, and obviously things that are happening day to day, in the news with protecting your company. So a question here is, the companies traditionally, and I know years ago, and even with even your own personal and security protection on your own home and things like that, you might even look at like that. Is security still seen, do you believe, as a cost in a lot of companies? So whether it be your home, whether you want to pay to get that alarm on your house, or whether you're like, listen, it's a quiet stay, it's a good stay, it's okay, nothing's gonna happen. So do you still believe? Do you feel that? Because we've always heard about in the news, and shortage in talent and investment in security, and I'd be fair and be honest to say, when 5-6 years ago, it was a lot of talk about it. We had GDPR come into play and things like that, but necessarily the investment potentially wasn't being made, in my opinion, looking at a lot of companies and their structures, and because I knew that the Irish market quite well and where everybody sat within security. So do you still see that with companies seeing security as a cost and not a necessary? Or what's your thoughts around that?
I think that they do. And I always say, trying to do security is like trying to sell insurance.
Yeah.
Because you don't see the benefit. Like if security works, all you see is diminishing returns. You see less effort in pen tests, you see less effort in remediation, 100%, less effort in development because there's no, oh, you have to go back and fix that now. So doing security really well, you don't really see the benefits other than it's diminishing returns in other areas. So it's very difficult to sell. And like I said, it's like trying to sell insurance. Nobody wants it because sure, it's never going to happen to us.
Yeah.
The best companies out there, the ones that have the more robust security teams, are either really innovative companies and usually somewhere in the tech area, but it's always somebody who has been breached already because they've been there.
They know the cost.
They understand. Yeah, they understand the benefits. They understand.
Yeah, and I think you put it really like properly there. Like it's insurance if something happens to you or your car, you crash, something like that, and the cost that will equate to. It's it's a real life example where if your posture, security, everything is working, the CFO might just see the bill. They don't necessarily see the benefits of what's happening. But I think we're all very aware of the landscape and the investment that's needed within security.
Absolutely, and everyone is aware. Like I'm always, companies, they always assure you, security is really important to us. It's on their websites, it's on the brochureware, and they tell you, but yeah, trust us because we're doing the right thing. And then if you happen to work there and you look behind the curtain, you're like, uh-oh.
Run quick. Yeah, no, well, Anthi, that's from me anyway. That's all the questions that we've had. It's been great to sit down and talk to you. I know we'll continue to talk and chat offline. I wish you the very best with Akeero now, and the growth, and I look forward to seeing the growth over the coming years, that you'll have. And yeah, I really appreciate your time because I do know you're really busy. So appreciate your time. Okay, thank you.